Well, this is my first video. Please let me know if the sound is good enough and if I'm going too slow or too fast. This is a companion video to the first graphic in my book on Amazon, whose title is A Prophecy, Locating Ezekiel's Altar. And it's about, this graphic concerns the 70 weeks of Daniel. There are two major number groups that we'll be dealing with. The first is the 70 years, and the other one is the 77 weeks, which is 490 years. I exclusively use the Rabbinic Hebrew calendar years because if you once you see how simple the timeline is and how everything falls into place, you realize that was the key to using it this whole time. Most people use the secular Gregorian calendar dates related to Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus, and you just can't get there from using those dates. It's best to use just the Hebrew calendar, and then we'll do some interesting tidbits along the way. So I start at the Hebrew year 3338, which according to the rabbis is the year that the first temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av, which of course most people realize too, or know that the second temple was also destroyed on the 9th of Av. Taking that date and using Daniel's inquiry of when the 70 years would be up for the desolation of Jerusalem that was prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah, we come to 3408 by adding 70 years to the 3338. So we then established that is the date that Cyrus issued his proclamation. So Daniel received the word from the angel, know and understand this, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. So the word is Cyrus's proclamation, which he issued throughout the kingdom. And it's also interesting, there's other proclamations that people try to use to fit whatever agenda they're trying to fit it to, but they always refer back to Cyrus's first proclamation because that's exactly where the original law came from. It came from Cyrus. So we're using 3408 and Cyrus the Great's proclamation. So that if that's the starting date, that's the end date of the 70 years, it's the starting date of the 490 years. So let's tack on 490 years. 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So that's pretty famous. So you now have 490 years added to the timeline. And then further on in the prophecy, know and understand this, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. So it is, the 490 years is broken up into 3 parts. The first part is the 7 weeks, which hardly anybody ever wonders what happened why is it broken up in 7 weeks. Personally, I feel like it was the start of Passover. They restarted the Passover sacrifices after they came back from Babylon at that point in time. But it's also interesting that in 3455, Xerxes I was assassinated, and this is, of course, according to the secular calendar, but I'm just using the Hebrew calendar now because of the 49 years, and Artaxerxes' reign at 3457. And what's interesting is that Artaxerxes is probably the son. It's either the king of Queen Esther or the son of Queen Esther. So and then we have the famous last week, which is the 70th week of Daniel. So the rest of Daniel's prophecy then is talking about what happens when, at the after the 62 sevens, which is the final week. So if you take that 490 years starting at 3408 and add it together, you get Hebrew calendar 3898. Now, the Hebrew calendar at 3898 is probably much more accurate now, where we can actually pop our head up and determine, well, what secular year is 3898? So if you pop your head up and look at the Gregorian calendar for 3898, it's 138 Common Era Gregorian calendar, which is, of course, the end of the Third Roman Jewish War, and Hadrian actually dies in that year, which is after that the Jews are banned from Jerusalem and most of Palestine, and the exile has actually started on this particular date. So this is very important to realize that 138 CE is related to 3898 Hebrew calendar. Just one additional thing that I found was interesting was that if you go to Ezekiel's prophecy about the exile of the 10 tribes of Israel, he's required to lie on his side for 390 days, which we interpret as 390 years. So if you look up and use the rabbi's reckoning of when the 10 tribes were exiled in 3208, the Hebrew calendar, and add 390 years to that, what's interesting is that if you pop your head up, Hebrew year is 3598. If you pop your head up, you find it's 164 BCE, which of course is a famous date. It's when Antiochus IV dies and the start of Hanukkah. So you can almost imagine that once the temple has been cleansed, that's where you find that the 10 tribes and the tribes of Judah and Benjamin are now combined together, and the exile is over for the 10 tribes. And that's when you have a completed 12-tribe Israel in 164 BCE being ruled by the Hasmoneans. So it's very interesting when you see these dates, because they start to pop up in different patterns. But I just wanted to show that it's very simple when we talk about the timeline of 70 years for the first exile, and then 490 years for Daniel's 70 weeks, ends at the end of the Bar Kokhba War in the year that Hadrian dies. So if you want to read more, as I add to this book, I'm constantly adding chapters. Go ahead, and it's only 99 cents, so I'm trying to make sure everybody is able to view and purchase this book, and I'll add more videos as we go.